Well, there she stood, while Mr. Bird twirled his hat and talked, and... Yes, look how stupid of me. I've left out the main characteristic of the famous Lolita smile, namely, while the tender nectared dimpled brightness played, it was never directed at the stranger in the room, but hung in its own remote flowered void, so to speak, or wandered with myopic softness over chance objects. And this is what was happening now. While fat Avis sidled up to her papa, Lolita gently beamed at a fruit knife that she fingered on the edge of the table, whereon she leaned, many miles away from me. Suddenly, as Avis clung to her father's neck and ear, while with a casual arm the man enveloped his lumpy and large offspring, I saw Lolita's smile lose all its light and become a frozen little shadow of itself, and the fruit knife slipped off the table and struck her with its silver handle a freak blow on the ankle which made her gasp and crouch head forward, and then, jumping on one leg, her face awful with the preparatory grimace which children hold till the tears gush, she was gone, to be followed at once and consoled in the kitchen by Avis, who had such a wonderful fat pink dad and a small chubby brother and a brand new baby sister and a home and 2 grinning dogs, and Lolita had nothing. And I have a neat pendant to that little scene, also in a Beardsley setting. Lolita, who had been reading near the fire, stretched herself and then inquired, her elbow up with a grunt, "Where is she buried, anyway?" "Who?" "Oh, you know, my murdered mummy." "And you know where her grave is," I said, controlling myself. Whereupon I named the cemetery, just outside Ramsdale between the railway tracks and Lakeview Hill. "Moreover," I added, "the tragedy of such an accident is somewhat cheapened by the epithet you saw fit to apply to it. If you really wish to triumph in your mind over the idea of death—" "Ray," said Lowe for hooray, and languidly left the room. And for a long while I stared with smarting eyes into the fire. Then I picked up her book. It was some trash for young people. There was a gloomy girl, Marion, and there was her stepmother, who turned out to be against all expectations a young, grey, understanding redhead, who explained to Marion that Marion's dead mother had really been a heroic woman, since she had deliberately dissimulated her great love for Marion because she was dying, and did not want her child to miss her. I did not rush up to her room with cries. I always preferred the mental hygiene of non-interference. Now, squirming and pleading with my own memory, I recall that on this and similar occasions it was always my habit and method to ignore Lolita's states of mind while comforting my own base self. When my mother, in a livid wet dress under the tumbling mist, so I vividly imagined her, had run panting ecstatically up that ridge above Moulinet to be felled there by a thunderbolt, I was but an infant, and in retrospect no yearnings of the accepted kind could I ever graft upon any moment of my youth, no matter how savagely psychotherapists heckled me in my later periods of depression. But I admit that a man of my power of imagination cannot plead personal ignorance of universal emotions. I may also have relied too much on the abnormally chill relations between Charlotte and her daughter. But the awful point of the whole argument is this. It had become gradually clear to my conventional Lolita during our singular and bestial cohabitation that even the most miserable of family lives was better than the parody of incest, which, in the long run, was the best I could offer the waif. Ramsdale revisited. I approached it from the side of the lake. The sunny noon was all eyes. As I rode by in my mud-flecked car, I could distinguish scintillas of diamond water between the far pines. I turned into the cemetery and walked among the long and short stone monuments. Bonjour, Charlotte. On some of the graves there were pale, transparent little national flags, slumped in the windless air under the evergreens. Gee, Ed, that was bad luck, referring to G. Edward Grammer, a 35-year-old New York office manager who had just been arraigned on a charge of murdering his 33-year-old wife, Dorothy. Bidding for the perfect crime, Ed had bludgeoned his wife and put her into a car. The case came to light when 2 country policemen on patrol saw Mrs. Grammer's new big blue Chrysler, an anniversary present from her husband, speeding crazily down a hill just inside their jurisdiction. God bless our good cops. The car sideswiped a pole, ran up an embankment covered with beard grass, wild strawberry and cinquefoil, and overturned. The wheels were still gently spinning in the mellow sunlight when the officers removed Mrs. G's body. It appeared to be a routine highway accident at first. Alas, the woman's battered body did not match up with only minor damage suffered by the car. I did better. I rolled on. It was funny again to see the slender white church and the enormous elms. Forgetting that in an American suburban street a lone pedestrian is more conspicuous than a lone motorist, I left the car in the avenue to walk unobtrusively past 342 Lawn Street. Before the great bloodshed, I was entitled to a little relief, to a cathartic spasm of mental regurgitation. Closed were the white shutters of the junk mansion, and somebody had attached a found black velvet hair ribbon to the white for sale sign which was leaning toward the sidewalk. No dog barked, no gardener telephoned. No Miss Opposite sat on the vined porch, where, to the lone pedestrian's annoyance, 2 pony-tailed young women in identical polka-dotted pinafores stopped doing whatever they were doing to stare at him. She was long dead, no doubt. These might be her twin nieces from Philadelphia.